Ubisoft is an odd beast when it comes to major publishers in the video game industry. It's certainly a company that's all about making that paper, especially in recent years when they were in danger of being bought out by Vivendi. There's also been this quirkiness and artistic element that can be seen in the blood of the company. Ubisoft has a tendency to hook a milk pump to a popular franchise and keep that shit lactating so their investors will be happy. Assassin's Creed suffered from the assembly line nature of its development until it had a year off, just so Ubisoft can make an Assassin's Creed movie, by the way. At the same time, this is a publisher that gave us Child of Light and Valiant Hearts. They turned the Rayman games into these awesome musical platformers. They made a turn-based strategy game out of Mario and Rabbids. They aren't afraid to get a little wild, so long as they have their Omelas-style sacrifice. Sorry, Azaza. One such act of creative paroxysm Ubisoft exhibited was 2008's Prince of Persia. Ubisoft had just completed a trilogy of Prince of Persia games a few years prior, themselves a reboot of a trilogy of games that came out primarily in the 90s. In 2008, Ubisoft was ready for the next evolution of the Prince of Persia games, and they meant evolution. The old games were linear, this one would be open world. The old games had more realistic look, this one would use shell shading, baby! The old games had game over screens, this one wouldn't even have loads between each death. By the way, this game gets a lot of shit for being too easy. Partially because the game wasn't especially difficult, but also because you couldn't die. Kinda just feels like the same Get Good crowd that came about after Dark Souls.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Gamer Zone where we play the hardest games. Check out my Mondo Chivo score.
This game should be commended for taking all the parts of Prince of Persia and rearranging them in creative ways. Just so you know, I'm going to refer to the original trilogy as Pop, the second trilogy as Sans, and the 2008 game as 08. The platforming was given an overhaul. While the Prince and Sans could do some ridiculous shit, the new Prince can run between several walls and crawl on ceilings. In the Pop games, combat encounters were 1v1, in Sans the combat was freeform and the Prince fought several enemies at once. In 08 they decided to go with both. Each encounter in 08 goes for cinematic bent. The Prince never faces more than one opponent at a time, and when he does fight an enemy, he decides to use the anime style of combat. He's just a fucking flippin' little boy with a magical princess who also does flips. Let's talk about characters, of which there are few. This isn't anything new for the franchise. They all have this apocalyptic feel to them, like the protagonist's worlds have fallen apart. There's the unnamed protagonist, voiced by Nolan North near the beginning of the Nolan North boom we got post-Uncharted and Assassin's Creed. We have Elika, an Aurora princess with magical light powers, voiced by another voice-acting juggernaut, Kerry Walgreen. These two are how the player interacts with the world. Obviously, you get to play as a protagonist, but Elika acts as an extension of the prince's abilities. She is your double jump. She lets you interact with the environment in unique ways, not too unique. Half of these powers feel like the same thing. There's even a dedicated attack button to get that light show going. As an aside, oh boy, he's gonna talk about race! That's right, 50s dad. The voice cast they got for this game is great on an individual level. Nolan North and Kerry Walgreen alone are fantastic. Fred Tatasciore, probably one of the great character actors in a profession full of character actors, turns in a solid performance as well. However, this is a game set in Persia, and the characters have a brown skin tone, but most of the actors in the game are white, and like I said, they are great talents. But their place in the game prevented people who are actually from the culture getting the job, which sucks because Assassin's Creed, another Ubisoft franchise, actually does pretty alright when casting roles for their non-white characters, especially protagonists. That's not a major indictment of the game, just wanted to point out that this is something that happens all the time. However, that becomes a real problem when you give the faceless enemies at the beginning of the game a darker skin tone as a visual shorthand for bad. Just a suggestion, white people, but stop fucking doing that shit, please. Don't push the idea that the darker your particular shade is, the looser your morals become. Cool? Cool. Luckily, the colorism only pops up at the beginning, as the big bad removes almost every living person from the game, leaving only the Prince, Elika, and the Broken King alive. There's also the big bad Ahriman, the god of darkness, and his 4 minions, each meant to reflect and contrast with Elika. The alchemist was an aura who obsesses over knowledge and feared death. Elika seeks enlightenment and is willing to die to save the world. The warrior was a royal who gave his soul to Ahriman to save his people. Elika gives her life in the service of Ramaz, the god of light, to save her people. And the hunter, which according to the Penny Arcade picture book, was a prince that became an animal after pushing his family and subjects away from him because of his lack of purpose. Ahriman gave the hunter a new purpose, hunting man, a fate Elika's mother tried to warn her about when the old stories come true. Elika's purpose is to lock up the god of darkness, Ahriman, a purpose she inherited from the Aura, who in turn gained their purpose from Ramaz. However, whenever Elika tries to fulfill her purpose, she is blocked. Like the concubine, her fate is controlled by the men in her life. Because the power of the land is patriarchal in design, the concubine fell into desperation, giving her soul to Ahriman. Not to achieve power of her own, but to be close to those who do have power. Men. Before the game starts, Elika had died. Doesn't matter how. Her father, the mournful king, performs a ritual to bring her back to life. Alright, best stat of the year award goes to... He unleashed the god of darkness in the world. Oh, then hang on. Did a Yakuza game come out in 2008? Ryuga Kotoko Kenzan. And Haruka's in the game. Kazuma Kiryu is the best free game now until forever. We did it, everyone. Almost people would be elated at the prospect of having a second chance at life. Becoming the reason no one gets to live theirs is an understandably harrowing feeling. She knows she has to do what she can to stop Ironman's return, but her father ain't gonna let that shit happen. Because of her father's decision, she is forced to go through the pain of death again. Which, that fucking sucks. The Morning King pops up every now and again to stop the Prince and Elika from reneging on his deal with Armin. Each time he shows up, he's a little more venomy, cause that's corruption. Anyways, we're witnessing the transition from human with morals to an amorphous blob of villainy. The Morning King was willing to sacrifice everything to bring Elika back to life, including her own autonomy. Like, what the fuck kind of life was he expecting Elika to have post-Armin release? Armin was going to slowly consume everything in his path until there was nothing left. That also brings us to the Prince, who also returned Elika from the dead. Did I mention that's where the game ends? Yeah, it just stops. There's a boss at the end with a cool conceit, the whole fight is seen through his eyes, but Elika dies. The Prince brings her back to life, and then Armin escapes. And it's like, that's why I bought the DLC special ending, which is a poor business practice to say the least. It also meant that I had to go into the PS3 PSN store, which is fucking terrible. Well, in the epilogue DLC, the Prince and Elika end up in an underground palace trying to outrun Armin and the echoes of the minions they fought in the main game. Elika's super fucking pissed at the Prince because, he undid all of their hard work. Elika gave her life to stop Armin, and it was her second death. She made a difficult choice without hesitation, and she had that taken away from her. Now the opportunity to seal Armin away is off the table. If Elika dies again, Armin is free forever. Now I think the Prince's logic for bringing Elika back to life makes sense. She was the only Aurora left in the beginning of the story, so if someone happens upon the temple and pops that shit open, there goes the neighborhood. But the Prince is doing the exact same thing the Morning King did. Armin and the King chase down Elika and the Prince throughout the entirety of the epilogue so they can reward the Prince for bringing Elika back to life. At first it seemed like Elika and the Prince were going to fall in love, but the end of the DLC makes it unclear whether or not Elika even considers the Prince a friend. I mean, look at how cute these animations are. That's all ruined now. This game doesn't have a happy ending, nor even a proper ending. It peters out in its darkest moments. Either Elika dies and the world ends, or the Prince dies and the world ends. Pop and Sans at least finish their stories. I think. I didn't really play Pop. One of the early trailers for 08 premiered in E3 2007. It was this somber tone piece illustrating the new art style and gameplay elements set to the foreboding melody of Segleper by Sigur Rós. I can't play that game without that song playing in my head. Segleper is a song about a lost seafarer who comes to accept his place in the world before he dies. I had this song translated on Genius.com if you're wondering. However, the last few lines of the song reveal to us the seafarer eventually finds his way home, but the song doesn't end for another minute. A haunting ring plays out over the song's final 30 seconds. Calm isn't the same as peace, which is the Prince's argument in the epilogue. Elika and the Prince may have brought color and life back to the sacred grounds, but they are still graveyards. When Elika gave her life to seal Armin away, his presence could still be felt. He still had influence. That motherfucker's coming back. But Elika had the ability to stop him now. The Prince could have spent the rest of his life getting people ready for Armin's return. It would have fit his character arc, kinda. It wouldn't have been a good place to take the story, but that's something he could have done. Instead, he took away Elika's sacrifice, negated her choice. Like a father. She's forced into another path where the outcome could mean her death, and the death of millions. Oh boy. The epilogue soaks in the Prince's choice. Their relationship erodes as the corruption overtakes the buried ruins of a once great kingdom because video game storytelling is subtle. Elika leaves, the Prince is lost and alone, and it all ends. Ubisoft will probably never make a sequel to this game. We'll never find out if Armin succeeds or not. We'll never see the Prince and Elika reconcile. This is a game we got, and it's a game we have to live with. The world of Prince of Persia is calm, but there's no peace. Ubisoft make Prince of Persia 08 too. Dun